In the summer of 1932, the South Party discovered a quarry on a ridgetop north of Bridgeport, Nebraska, that contained a large number of bones of Miocene-era rhinos. They spent several months excavating in and around the site. The quarry was on the farm of the impoverished Brubaker family, and the South Party camped in the Indian Creek Valley a short way downstream from the family's sodhouse. They regularly purchased milk and other supplies from the family, whose daughter would often make the deliveries. After the South Party left the site, they paid the Brubaker family for the use of their property. With that money, the family moved out of their ramshackle soddie and built a much more elaborate sodhouse with multiple windows and 2 doors, an unheard of luxury in a sodhouse, especially during the Depression. That house still stands on the farm, inhabited by the current leesee of the property. Eiseley related his experiences at this location in his essay, The Last Neanderthal.
It happened in the West, somewhere in that wide, drought-ridden land of empty coulees that carry in sudden spates of flood the boulders of the Rockies toward the sea. I suppose that, with the outward flight of population, the region is as wild now as it was then, some 40 years ago. It would be useless to search for the place upon a map, though I have tried. Too many years and too many uncertain miles lie behind all bone hunters. There was no town to fix upon a road map. There was only a sod house tucked behind a butte, out of the prevailing wind. And there was a little spring-fed pond in a grassy meadow. That I remember. Bone hunting is not really a very romantic occupation. One walks day after day along miles of frequently unrewarding outcrop. One grows browner, leaner, and tougher, it is true, but one is far from the bright lights, and the prospect, barring a big strike, like a mammoth, is always to abandon camp and go on. It was really a gypsy profession, then, for those who did the field collecting. In this case, we did not go on. There was an eroding hill in the vicinity, and on top of that hill, just below sod cover, were the foot bones, hundreds of them, of some lost tertiary species of American rhinoceros. It is useless to ask why we found only foot bones, or why we gathered the mineralized things in such fantastic quantities that they must still lie stacked in some museum storeroom. Maybe the creatures had been immured standing up in a water hole, and in the millions of succeeding years the rest of the carcasses had eroded away from the hilltop stratum. But there were the foot bones, and the orders had come down, so we dug carpals and metacarpals till we cursed like an army platoon that headquarters has forgotten. There was just one diversion, the spring, and the pond in the meadow. There, under the bank, we cooled our milk and butter purchased from the soddie inhabitants. There we swam and splashed after work. The country people were reserved and kept mostly to themselves. They were uninterested in the dull bones on the hilltop, unenlivened by skills or treasure. After all, there was reason for their reserve. We must have appeared, by their rural standards, harmless, but undoubtedly touched in the head. The barrier of reserve was never broken. The surly farmer kept to his parched acres and estimated to his profit our damage to his uncultivated hilltop. The slatternly wife tended to a few scrawny chickens. In that ever-blowing landscape, their windmill largely ran itself. Only a stocky, barefoot girl of 20 sometimes came hesitantly down the path to our camp to deliver eggs. Some 60 days had drifted by upon that hillside. I began to remember the remark of an old fossil hunter, who, in his time, had known the Gold Coast and the African veldt. When calico begins to look like silk, he had once warned over a fire in the Sierras, it is time to go home. But enough of that. We were not bad young people. The girl shyly brought us the eggs, the butter, and the bacon, and then withdrew. Only after some little time did her appearance begin to strike me as odd. Men are accustomed to men in their various color variations around the world. When the past intrudes into a modern setting, however, it is less apt to be visible, because to see it demands knowledge of the past, and the past is always camouflaged when it wears the clothes of the present. The girl came slowly down the hill one evening, and it struck me suddenly how alone she looked, and how, well, alien, she also appeared. Our cook was stoking up the evening fire, and as the shadows leapt and flickered, I, leaning invisibly against a rock, was suddenly transported 100,000 years into the past. The shadows and their dancing highlights were the cause of it. They had swept the present out of sight. That girl coming reluctantly down the pathway to the fire was removed from us in time, and subconsciously she knew it as I did. By modern standards, she was not pretty, and the gingham dress she wore, if anything, defined the difference. Short, thick-set, and massive, her body was still not the body of a typical peasant woman. Her head, thrust a little forward against the light, was massive-boned. Along the eye orbits at the edge of the frontal bone, I could see outlined in the flames an armored protuberance that, particularly in women, had vanished before the close of the Vermian ice. She swung her head almost like a great muzzle beneath its curls, and I was struck by the low bun-shaped breadth at the back. Along her exposed arms one could see a flash of golden hair. No, we are out of time, I thought quickly. We are each and every one displaced. She is the last Neanderthal, and she doesn't know what to do. We are those who eliminated her long ago. It is like an old scene endlessly reenacted. Only the chipped stones and the dead game are lacking.